everyone, and welcome to our final episode of the Future People podcast. I'm Amy, and I'm the Future People Programme Employability Coordinator at ULaw. And once again, I am glad to be joined by Evie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Evie. I'm the Future Pupil Programme Coordinator at ULaw, and I'll be going on to pupillage at Foundry Chambers in just over a month now.
Very exciting. So for our final podcast, as a kind of goodbye from us, we thought we'd reflect on both our journeys to the bar, what it's been like to get to the position that we are in now. And as Evie said, it's only a month before she starts pupillage. Yeah. And I think part of the aim of this podcast is also to demonstrate that there isn't a set formula. There's no need to stress about trying to fit the mold. And when coming to the bar, everyone will have very different journeys. There are certainly essentials. So, for example, education, mini pupillages, etc. But everyone's journey to the bar will still look very different. And I think that's important to remember. So if we start from the very beginning, what sparked your initial interest, Evie, in the bar?
For me, I have been interested in being a criminal barrister specifically from the age of about 16. So that's quite lucky in the sense of everything I've done since then has been very tailored towards obtaining the pupillage that I'll be starting very soon. So in terms of what did spark that initial interest, it was participating in mock trial at school. So my school had a really fantastic mock trial team. They'd been to the States to compete. They always did quite well in the national competitions. So I decided to join them, use some of my outspoken class ways in a good way, and seemed to pick it up really well. I really enjoyed it. We progressed really far, both nationally, and I got to go to the States as well to compete individually. So that really being in the courtroom, discovering criminal advocacy very early on, really did start my initial interest in the bar.
And it sounds like it wasn't that it just kind of demonstrated to you that you were good at advocacy. It was very in a legal context at that point. Am I right in thinking you kind of saw that not only as you enjoying public speaking, enjoying advocacy, but seeing how much that related to the criminal bar and being a barrister?
Yeah, absolutely. So the advocacy in the criminal context, the cases themselves really tickled my brain intellectually. And then the advocacy I found really exciting. When I was prepping for these mock trials, despite having A levels to do and everything like that, it didn't feel like work. And I think as soon as you kind of find something that you could make your full-time job that doesn't feel like you're actually working, you're actually enjoying yourself, you're passionate about it, that's like striking gold dust. And I was lucky enough to find that so young, and it enabled me really to make every single decision from sixth form onwards tailored to becoming a criminal barrister.
In difference, so I did nothing legal at school or at sixth form. I didn't do any formal debating, although I did debate in class, particularly in RE. I really enjoyed getting into those social debates. I did a lot of sport, but yeah, I didn't do any mock trials. I wouldn't say that law was particularly on my radar at that point. Some people would kind of joke, because they were debating and talking, could be a lawyer, but they'd use that broad term lawyer. It didn't really mean anything to me at that point. So yeah, I wouldn't say I had an initial spark at school. I took part in Model United Nations. Well, I actually didn't take part in it, but I signed up to it. I pitched a proposal and I was selected to take part, but actually decided to drop out because I was just quite anxious at sixth form, quite an anxious person, which I think doesn't sound like a great recipe to be a barrister, but you're still young at that point, and I think you don't have to have it all figured out. I think it's the key for sixth form and school. And indeed, you might have some early obstacles you might encounter. It's not all going to be plain sailing. For some people, it might be a real uphill battle. Would you say there were any specific obstacles, Eves, for you at school or at sixth form?
Yeah, school was a little bit challenging for me towards the later years. My mum was actually diagnosed with had terminal brain cancer when I was about 14. And then I'd stay sort of a couple of years after that, so 14 until maybe like the end of year 11, I was sort of struggling with coming to terms with that through the GCSE exams and trying to find coping mechanisms, not really talking about it as you do, bottling it up. And then shortly before my GCSE exams, it kind of all unraveled, went through that experience, but my school really looked after me. Surprisingly, the GCSEs, I did really well in them. And I think that gave me the boost towards A levels to be like, I could actually do really well here, could go to a fantastic university. And the bar is something that I could aspire to go to. And so really during sixth form, I kind of channeled that emotional experience into studying really hard. Obviously, I did the mock trial experiences, and so, channeled the energy into that. Tried to ace both as best as I could, tried to get into the best university I could. And so, whilst it was a very distressing experience, and I had to learn a lot in terms of coping mechanisms and resilience from an early age, it very much enabled me to find the motivation to get through sixth form and start university in the best footing possible in terms of what I wanted to do. Because as I said before, from a very early age, I knew I wanted to be a criminal barrister. And whilst that is a blessing in many ways, it's also a curse in the sense of you're still young, you're still probably listening to a lot of advice that now I would probably not have listened to as much. So lots of the myths around, you must score the best grades you absolutely can, otherwise it's the end of the road. You must come from a certain background, you must have certain accolades, you must have a certain manner about you. I listened to that far too much, tried to sort of tailor everything into that. And I think looking back, it probably wasn't as necessary as I thought it was. But I kind of went into the bar with that mindset, and it's paid off for me. But I do think in some ways, if you find that you want to become a barrister a bit later, you do have that maturity to see through a lot of the background noise in terms of you must be this to become a barrister, because it's not the case. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that leads us quite nicely on to our university experiences. And you did a law degree, Eves, and I did a non-law degree. And again, I think, as you mentioned, as you touched on, Evie, that there is an idea, that there's a path, a set formula to the bar, but I really don't think there is. So I did an economics and politics degree, and I didn't do much, again, legal work experience at university or even legal activities. You did mooting, am I right, Evie, at university? And probably
I
a whole
did.
host of other things.
Yeah, but again, as I was saying, I picked my degree firmly based on that's what I thought I needed to become a barrister. And I absolutely loved criminal law whilst doing mock trial, but I'm very much more in love with the practical elements of the law. And I went to a very academic institution, and it was just completely different to what I expected. And so I do think, again, if I just I hadn't been so young when I decided this was what I wanted and was where I was going, I maybe would have picked a degree that I would have loved a lot more. But I picked the right city to go to. I was in love with the city. I've stayed there ever since. So it was definitely the right university. But maybe I would have picked something else looking back now. Who knows?
Yeah, so obviously doing an economics and politics degree, it kept my options open. Knew that I could still do a law conversion course after if I wanted to, but at that initial stage when I was picking what degree that I wanted to do, I wasn't sure. I wasn't 100% sure. So I just decided to do two subjects that I really enjoyed, which was economics and politics. And I think that works as well. If there is a degree course that you want to do, and it's not law, you can talk about the experiences that your non-law degree gave you. And when it comes to pupillage applications, you can talk about how economics and problem solving relates to trying to come up with a really watertight case theory, for example. So I would say do what you enjoy, and you can make it work. And actually, it might contribute to really giving a genuine outline about your experiences to date and your motivations to the bar. So In terms of activities, we've mentioned kind of mooting and specifically law things. I did a lot of sport, specifically cricket. I think you did rugby, Evie, if I remember correctly.
I did, collecting bruises left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
I absolutely, yeah. Sport is so good for de-stressing, and just having a break from academia, isn't it? It's just fantastic for resetting your
Mm.
mind, making you feel fresh and energized.
Definitely, and really good for making friends. Particularly, well, not that I guess I'm a bit biased towards cricket and team sports, but I do think with team sports, you
For
make
sure.
really great friends. You're in a competitive environment together. And a lot of my really good uni friends came from cricket. I don't know if you also had a similar experience, Evie, with
Yeah,
rugby.
same. Some of my best friends from rugby, absolutely amazing gals. And you're
Mm.
in that supportive kind of all looking after each other. It's very collegiate, isn't it? And it's just a lovely
Mm.
environment to be part of.
Yeah, I also had the opportunity to work on the committee with cricket. So I was publicity sec in my second year, and then I
Oh,
was club
me too for
captain.
rugby.
Oh,
Oh my
were you?
goodness.
I love it. Getting all the Instagrams in. We should have done it. We
Yeah,
should have done podcasts if only we'd known. Um,
I
so
know, it'd be
yeah,
so good.
so then I was club captain in third year, which was really good fun. But also without not I didn't have it in mind then. I wasn't thinking, oh, I want to be club captain so that in future I can talk about it in pupils applications because I didn't know I was going to do that. But looking back, I just did things that I enjoyed. I took opportunities that were there for me, and actually I did then use those as a way of demonstrating my suitability for the bar. It's a leadership position. It demonstrates teamwork skills. So don't feel like everything has to be legal for them to be relevant. If you do have your mindset on the bar, lots of different experiences are going to be relevant, and it can show that you're a well-rounded and interesting person. I also hosted a radio show at university, so I guess that's kind of podcasty, but
Mm.
again, it wasn't legal. It was just a show about, I think we called it like positive vibes show or something. We had some good debates on there and had some good guests, but it was generally just quite a general show, but it was good fun. And again, I could use that as demonstrating that I can speak with precision, I'm articulate, but at the time I was just doing something fun and something that I enjoyed. So be a yes person at university, but it doesn't have to be legal. It could be lots of different fun things, but I would say try and get involved in lots of things that you might enjoy. Would you say the same, Eves?
Yes, definitely. Doing a law degree, a lot of the opportunities were kind of carved out for us anyway to get involved in just from being part of a law society. But my university was very much tailored towards the solicitor route, and not only that, but also the commercial law route, neither of which was where I wanted to be. So I was on the back foot a little bit with that. I kind of had to find my own opportunities, stay fully committed to the criminal bar despite most of my peers choosing a different path. And also, I was very much grappling with adjusting to this very academic degree that I found very challenging, particularly in the first 2 years. So yeah, the rugby really for me was just such a nice safe space to get out, go have fun, a good
Mm,
break from a very intensive degree. Very enjoyable by the end, but when I was in sort of cut and thrust of first and second year, it felt very challenging.
yeah.
And so yeah, definitely make sure you're making time to do the things you enjoy. And also it's university. Never lose sight of the fact of you can make these some of the best years of your life.
Mm,
Take that opportunity, build friends for life, do things you've never done before. Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, it's as much as a kind of character building.
For
I
sure.
don't want to say finding yourself because that sounds a bit
I was
cliche, but
about to say that too.
yeah, it is the kind of building yourself as a person rather than just building a CV. Don't get me wrong, that's important, but all that stuff will fall together by doing some of the things you love, like we talked about, sport, hosting a radio show, etc. Sport also helped me find a structure. So my degree actually didn't have that many lectures and seminars, and so cricket and doing other things alongside my course gave my university experience structure, which I think I needed, because it just helped me. I think it just helps you feel a bit more put together when you have a structure. How did you find that aspect of uni, Eves, maybe not having that kind of 9 to 5 that you would in, say, a job or a more consistent work?
Yeah, it was really difficult to find structure. I'm typically I thrive without a routine, I would say, but I do suffer from quite bad insomnia. I've had that since the difficulties of my mum at school. I'd say that's when the insomnia kind of arose. And then through university, because there were so many things to do, so many things to see, I had rugby, I had the lectures and seminars, the studying, wanting to get on top of things all the time, needing to do work experience. It did feel like there weren't enough hours in the day to sleep, and sleep went out the window. And I think through a lot of my degree, I was on 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, and it was not good quality sleep.
Mm,
Anyone with insomnia knows what I mean by you could even go to bed with an 8 hour window, and that will not be used for sleep. It's such an annoying thing to have. But the routine, not having a routine, did not help with that for sure. Now I'm in the working world. It's a lot easier to get to sleep because of just having the routine of the daily working day. Um, but I'd say for sure at university, when you don't have a routine and sort of you could use any hour of the day to work, try and be kind to yourself, make sure you're making time for yourself. Don't feel guilty when you're not working. Because it's very easy to just work all hours of the day otherwise, and that's not healthy. Um,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because I'd agree with you, Evie. I generally don't like having a too strict routine, but I think
mm,
having some things or having just things to go to. It doesn't necessarily
for
need to be
sure.
at specific times, but just things that mark something in the calendar. Otherwise,
Yeah.
daily you can just kind of feel that if you've got an essay that you have to be working, as you say, Evie, you have to be working on that all the time, otherwise you're going to feel guilty about it.
Yeah,
um Having little things that are in your calendar, make sure you have that break. And I think that's really helpful.
definitely.
um so I know that you did a year abroad, Evie,
I
and it
did.
sounded like an incredible experience. Where did you go again? Some
Southeast Asia, so Singapore.
Yeah,
It was
incredible.
fantastic. I really thought for me that was the game changer. That was such a reset for me at university because I had a year, um, got to go to amazing places, meet amazing people. It was a really amazing experience. And on top of that, I had time, which I didn't have at university, to really sit and think about what I needed to do, get my ducks in a row in terms of going to the criminal bar. And sort of reset my motivation, make sure I was on the path, make sure I wasn't getting persuaded to go down a different route because that's what everyone else seemed to be doing. And so, yeah, the year abroad was fantastic. Didn't regret it one bit. Yeah, it was just such a fun experience. And so, yeah, it was during the year abroad that I sort of thought about the chambers I might want to do mini pupilages with, thought about the gaps in my CV, thought about where I personally needed to develop. So, anywhere where confidence needed to be built, or maybe some honing of advocacy skills, or making sure that, I was functioning at the top of my game, healthy, trying to get some sleep, all those things as well. So it was such a good um, period of time to really sort of start focusing my energies on becoming a barrister at that point.
It almost sounds like that change of environment allowed you to breathe a bit and
Yeah,
take a step back and look at the whole picture.
for sure. I'm a London girl. Absolutely loved being at university in London, but just stepping away just for a little bit and then coming back. And now, life is good. But it was such a good reset.
Did you carry on rugby out of interest while you were on your abroad, Evie?
Oh my goodness, no. The heat. I tried. I did try. I think I
Yeah.
did 2 or 3 training sessions. And they do training sessions for 3 hours. I'm sorry,
Oh my
just
goodness.
not in that heat. Um,
Yeah.
so I tried. But also time seemed a lot more finite because we were only there for in total 8 months, sort of four
Mm.
months for each term. And there were so many things to do, so many things to see. So I took a bit of a break then, but then came back to final year and it was all steam ahead on the rugby pitch.
Were you nervous initially about going on the year abroad? Because when you're settled already at uni, I feel like it could be quite daunting, kind of almost starting again in a different university for 8 months or so.
Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky. One of my best friends from my law degree was going with me. So
Nice.
that was really nice. And so we looked after each other throughout the whole year. And then I don't think I was nervous. I think the excitement was too much to
Yeah.
be nervous. And I am very much I am a traveler. I do like new experiences more so than being a homebody, I'd say. And so for me, this was just wow.
Yeah.
So a few of my friends were nervous, and I think they struggled a little bit with homesickness at the start, as you do probably when you go to university for the first time. But that quickly subsided.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a massive change, but also what you learn by just going to a different country, sorting out everything, doing all of the life admin that's involved. It really forces you to turn into an adult.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't touch on it when we talked about university, but I would consider myself quite homesick at the beginning. But as you say, you get into it, you start doing all your different activities, your courses, you meet your friends, and it just subsides.
Hmm.
And that's absolutely natural if you feel like that initially. Um, so did you work part-time alongside your university degree, Evie?
Yeah, I've experienced a few different roles. So at school, I was a waitress. So did that in sixth form in my local pub. That was very fun. And top tip for anyone considering part-time jobs, the skills you learn from dealing with a lot of intoxicated customers does come
Mm.
in handy in terms of the old interpersonal skills. Um, and then at university, I worked in a bar. I was also a barista. I worked at Odeon for a little bit too. So yeah, did some different roles. Going to university in London, very expensive. Definitely needed some additional money coming in. What about you, Amy? What part-time roles did you do?
So at school in sixth form, I was a cricket coach, which was really nice because I was being paid. I mean, it had its moments where it was challenging. Again, not dealing with drunk people in this situation, but dealing with younger people can be unpredictable.
Yeah.
And sometimes going to teach cricket in primary schools, I was had class sizes of 25 to 30, and it can be carnage. It was sometimes more crowd control than it was
Mm,
cricket,
mm,
but it was nice doing something that generally I enjoyed and got paid for doing that. And I did enjoy coaching cricket, particularly for the higher level. So doing kind of county coaching was really enjoyable. Um,
mm.
and then I don't think I did work part time at university. I was doing a lot of volunteering work in terms of I volunteered for something called Solidarity, and I was also doing my cricket. Um, Kind of committee roles, but I don't think I worked part time unless I'm completely missing something, but I don't think I am. But then I went back to work when I started my GDL. I did bar work as well, and completely echo what Evie says about bar work. It teaches you all sorts of different things, definitely interpersonal skills, the ability to work with a lot of different people, and also work at pace. It's a high pressured environment,
For
and so you
sure.
can demonstrate that you can work under pressure by working at a bar. And I enjoyed it. It had its moments, absolutely, but it was quite nice working with the other people at the bar. Everyone was really fun and lovely. Lots of the customers were really nice as well, which helped. So I
Hmm.
enjoyed that. But then obviously it was the COVID pandemic for my GDL. So I was a bit in and out of the bar work with the COVID restrictions, and it was that strange time. So for me, it was the final term of university where COVID hit. So I went home, and it's not similar to your year abroad at all, Evie, in the fact that like they can't be compared in that sense. But in terms of a reflection period, I think almost that was my reflection period,
Yeah.
because COVID just gave me a lot of time to think. And in that space where I came home from university, I kind of was stopping doing all the activities, and I wasn't caught up in that university lifestyle. Came home and thought, right, what do I really want to do with my life now that university is essentially done? And that's when I
Mm.
decided to embark on the GDL, it also was, I'd just done a mini pupillage just before COVID, and before I'd had to stay at home, and obviously university had ended because of COVID. It was about March time. I'd just done a mini pupillage and absolutely loved it. Was really inspired by it. It was my first one, but I was just really taken in by it. And I think that timing of doing that mini pupillage and then having that period of reflection where there was not much going on because it was COVID, was what's the word? Kind of not inspired me, but gave me that room to kind of breathe, think about what I want to do, and then hence deciding to apply for the GDL and doing the GDL. So I think it's also important to say here that I started the GDL straight after university, and as I've mentioned, I didn't really do much legal experience, or things that would be specifically maybe on like a legal CV, so things like mooting. I'd done that one mini pupillage that I mentioned, but other than that, I didn't have legal experience, and I was able to build that quite quickly despite the pandemic. And I think it's also demonstrates that those things that I mentioned are also really valuable. So being on committee positions, doing cricket coaching, having a good degree, etc., was a really good basis to start my legal career. And I was able to build the legal experience I needed through my GDL and through the bar course. So don't panic if you haven't got I mean, by all means, if you know that you want to be a barrister, get that experience, but don't panic if you don't, because people come to the realization that they want to be a barrister at different stages, and that's fine. And you can use the various different experiences that you already have to demonstrate your skill set, and then use the GDL and use the time that you have to gain the legal experience and the certain requirements that you might need to apply to the bar.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, the year abroad, that allowed me to have that period of getting everything together. And then my final year of university, I managed to use in terms of picking up the legal experiences, doing the mini pupillages. And then COVID hit me as well, final term of final year of university. But obviously, having done a law degree, it was straight onto the bar course. For me, but also the in scholarship process that hit just before COVID as well. So I had my in scholarship interview in March, and a year abroad again in that regard gave me that time to really start thinking about that application. I really needed that scholarship. I definitely would not have been able to afford the bar course without it, by no stretch of the imagination. So yeah, absolutely, just having a period to breathe and get things together is absolutely okay. And if you've not had that yet, feel free to take that time out. There's absolutely no rush. And it's better to sort of start fully going into the process, particularly the bar course, with sort of your plan in place of how you're going to get everything together so that you can start making some really good applications. So never be afraid to just take some time out to yourself and really think about what you want, what areas of law you're interested in, what you need to do to get to where you want to be.
Absolutely, and also because the bar course is intense, and I think that leads us quite nicely onto the bar course.
It does indeed.
And I think it's fair to say that it's a step up.
Yeah.
I think having done the GDL, I was used to intense, lots of content, intense studying. But having done the GDL during the pandemic, there wasn't a lot else to do other than the GDL, if you see what I mean. I was kind of working at the bar when I could, but for large portions, it was the pandemic. So I think it was a step up for me to doing I would say, even more intense course, which is the bar course, but then also having life going on around me. So I worked as a nanny, and I just moved to London. So I did find the bar course intense and a step up. Would you say the same, Eves?
Yeah, in sort of maybe a different way, because I hadn't done a GDL, so I was not used to the level of intensity. But I think the content compared to the LLB content, I found a lot more enjoyable. As I've touched on before, my interests are more practical. So I really enjoyed the practical learning style of the bar course as opposed to the very, very theoretical learning style of the LLB at the university I chose to go to. Particularly the criminal side of things, I loved. That made things easier. But for me, the bar course hit during the COVID lockdown. So I had nothing else to do on the bar course. And so I think that made it all a bit more manageable, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I'd been a social being at university, and so the bar course, no socializing was on offer, so no distractions.
I think in a way, that time, if it was going to come on the bar course, is not necessarily a bad time to have it because of how intense it is. Although, did that mean that your advocacy was online?
Mixture.
Mixture,
So
okay.
we were kind of in and out. So a few months in person, a few months online. All exams were online. Did have some experience of advocacy in person, but for me, this is where all of my mock trial and then mooting through university consistently paid off, is because I kind of went onto the bar course with all of the core elements and experiences needed in place.
Mm,
Just because I'd known I wanted to do it so long, so I had a lot more time to play
yeah.
with in terms of getting those things. So it was less of a learning curve for me in the sense of doing advocacy in person, because I'd already experienced that. But I do think anyone that had not done advocacy before the bar course and then had to do the advocacy mostly online, it would have been quite difficult to understand the realities of what it's like to advocate in front of people.
Yeah.
But of course, you can pick that up afterwards by doing, pro bono and county court advocacy experience as well.
Yeah. And I touched on being a nanny while I was at the bar course. You, towards the end of the bar course, was it, Evie, that you started your work at Intervene?
Yes, so during the bar course, I applied for pupillage, got a reserve offer from my favourite set, that didn't turn into a real offer. Me and Amy have dived into this devastating experience on a previous podcast. And then, so after I wallowed from that, I then applied to Intervene Project, which is a charity that pursues claims for prisoners when they've been abused in prison. And so about sort of 4 weeks in to volunteering there after the bar course, I got offered the job of managing a charity. So had secured a full-time job, and could stay in London and be paid and all of those things that you need to live. And on top of that, Intervene Project was such a fantastic experience. And I would say, I've said before, I came into the bar course with the core ingredients, but the big thing I was missing was real world, long-term legal experience with the clients I'm going to be dealing with at the criminal bar. That was missing. And Intervene Project filled that gap and then some. Absolutely fantastic. I got to advocate in a county court. I had 200 clients that I was solely responsible for. I was managing sort of 40 volunteers across the year, and helping them with their journeys to the bar, dealing with case after case after case, doing settlements, putting the CPR into practice, which for anybody that goes to the bar course after you have sort of been in a job where you're issuing claims, civil litigation makes far more sense. If you go to the bar course and haven't never sort of issued a claim in a county court, you are going to have to grapple with civil litigation. It's a very sort of challenging subject to wrap your head around sometimes, but if you've worked and you've issued claims before you go to the bar course, it all makes so much sense. So that will really help you in terms of acing the bar course if you've worked in a legal job beforehand. What else was I saying about Intervene, Amy? Yeah, it was just a fantastic experience and the absolute game changer on my pupillage applications. It got me into interviews at most of the sets I applied to that second year, and of course, got me my pupillage offer at Foundry, which is so fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it also shows that a lot can change in a year. And
For
actually,
sure.
don't panic if I mean, as you said, Eve, we've gone into this, but don't panic, and that everyone's journey is different, and that getting that job actually made a real difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the real difference comes when you get competency questions and you can answer them seamlessly. You're not having to think about your entire life history and where one small experience could be used to show a certain skill. Once you've worked in a really good legal job where you're getting all the experiences you need to be a good barrister, you'll be able to answer those questions pretty seamlessly, and
Yeah.
getting that experience will be an absolute game changer. If you're struggling with pupillage interviews or applications at the moment, once you've been in a long-term legal job, things will fall into place.
Absolutely. And as we said, we spoke a lot about the process of getting pupillage. So I think we're going to round off the podcast by talking a bit about how we're feeling now. So as we've said, Evie's due to start very soon, in a month. So
Absolutely.
how you feel? Is it excitement, nerves? Is everything ready? You've got your wig and gown?
Yeah, mixture of everything, to be honest, Amy. I've got my wig and gown. I took my mum shopping, so she had a fun day out in London, and yeah, brought the wig and gown. I'm getting my suits together, been on some holidays. I've ticked off Ibiza, I've ticked off Amsterdam.
But it's not been all relaxation, has it, Eve? There's been some hurdles along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just whilst we're touching on hurdles, I am conscious that I didn't address a couple of hurdles from the bar course. It wasn't all smooth running. So one of my exams I couldn't sit whilst on the bar course, just because of illness. COVID was going around and all that. So I did have to postpone that. And then I went straight onto my job at Intervene after the bar course. And so the period in which I was supposed to sit this exam, I was working full time at Intervene, issuing all the claims, handling the clients. And so I had 1 week of leave that I could book off to revise for criminal litigation. And sadly, I suffered a bereavement at the very start of that week and still needed to press ahead with the exam. And that was a really difficult time. It was really sort of, you had to be really disciplined with the study. You had to kind of push the feelings down to get through that week. Managed to come out the other side, did well in the exam. But it's just the point I wanted to make with this is that a lot of people do go through very difficult things on a bar course or on their law degree or the GDL. And taking time out is fine. Taking time to yourself is fine. And going through those kind of obstacles will build resilience in you that will really help you in your career. So don't ever think that when you face hurdles or things go slightly wrong, maybe you don't pass an exam on the bar course. You are not the only one. There are many people that really struggle to get through that course. Absolutely. It's a very challenging course. And the lesson to take away is it won't stop you from becoming a barrister. Nothing that happens on the bar course, as long as you get through the other side, will stop you from becoming a barrister. So try not to, if you do find it a very challenging course, don't let it get to you. You'll get through it. And if you do have hurdles, it'll actually help you, because when you come out the other side, you'll know that you can get through really tough times and still manage to, do what you need to do. And it will just prove to you that you do have sort of that drive, the determination, the emotional stamina to succeed at the bar as well. So I just wanted to touch on, it's not all rainbows and smiles all the time. And it's certainly not been smooth running for me. And I know it's not for a lot of people. And it can seem that way looking in on the outside, that everyone's got it together. They absolutely don't. And the point is, that's not going to stop you from becoming a barrister.
Absolutely. And even in the run up to a pupillage, Eve having to been grappling with yet another hurdle.
Yeah, so I mean, I've not really talked about this openly, and I actually didn't through my own, it was really stupid of me now looking back, but I didn't really address it at undergrad. I didn't address it during the bar course, but I do have a very serious hearing impairment on a profound scale. A lot of people don't actually know about this, but of course, going into pupillage, I need to have that sorted for courtrooms. The criminal courtrooms are not an easy environment to hear in, and I can't be sort of struggling and not doing my absolute utmost to ensure that my hearing is at the best level it can be going in, for the sake of clients. And so I've been trying to get the hearing equipment I need. The support wasn't necessarily out there in terms of government support. But thankfully for me, what has helped is my inn actually has a disability scheme. I've applied for that, and essentially I've managed to secure the funding to cover all of the equipment I'm going to need to the highest level to ensure that I can practice And so that's been fantastic. But the process of getting that funding has been a bit stressful, because obviously everything I've done since I was 16 to try and become a barrister, I didn't want it all to come crashing down because of that. But now reflecting on it, that scheme has been in place and was accessible to me from before I started the bar course. And, you know, I just was in my head about it, didn't want to really talk about it with sort of pupillage panels. I didn't want to talk about it with my tutors or my peers. And so that stopped me from getting the support I needed a lot earlier on, and probably would have helped me with a lot of the elements of becoming a barrister as well. But it's sorted now, so happy days. But if you are, you know, if you're coming to the bar with a disability and you do want to talk to anyone about it, because I know personally it was very difficult to find people to talk to about it, please do reach out, because it's been a stressful process, but I've learned a lot from it. And I do really want people to know that if they are going to the bar with a disability, the support is there and you can absolutely access it.
And so now, Evie, do you feel set? Do you feel set and ready? And do you feel excited?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I'm really excited. I won't lie, nervous. You know, the imposter syndrome does tickle me every now and again. But yeah, I've wanted this for so long, and it feels like everything's finally in place to get going. So I'm so excited, but I need to find suits that fit me. So we'll keep hunting for those. And being a 5-foot gal and trying to find suits is never a fun experience. And what else do I need to do, Amy? Oh my goodness. Yeah, just making sure I spend quality time with the people I want to before I begin is top of my priority list. But yeah, all excitement really, I think.
And probably
now.
having a bit of a rest and a recharge as well as the holidays. You're gonna want to make sure that you're ready and raring to go on the day.
Yes, and me and my mum are going to Paris actually next week, and that's going to be our last holiday together for a long time. But yeah, so that'll be really nice too, just to have a good old rest, a proper sort of bonding session before it all kicks off. But what about you, Amy? What are you thinking of doing in the run up to starting in March?
So I'm working here till December, and then I'm gonna travel. So I'm going to move home for a bit and save some money, and then I'm going to travel for a little bit, get that out my system before I start. I think I'm still in that. It still seems quite a long way off for me. I know it's going to come around really quickly, but it's still, when people are like, oh, it's your pupillage must be starting soon, I'm like, say March, and they're like, oh, that's ages. And I think it's been, because it was last year, it will have been just over a year and a half. So it still kind of feels away yet, but I know it's going to creep up on me. I am excited, but I'm also nervous, and there are going to be a few changes for me. Obviously, it's not just starting the job itself, the pupillage, it's moving cities. So I'm moving to Manchester, which is exciting, but obviously also comes with its natural nerves that come with changing location. But it's exciting, and it's a new start, and I'm looking forward to that. So before I round off, Eve, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we conclude the Future People podcast series?
Maybe just, I mean, I hope it came through naturally in the podcast, but maybe, well, I hope at least we've kind of debunked a few myths of what kind of person you need to be or what you need to have on the old CV to become a barrister. You know, both Amy and I have, you know, done other things outside of the law. You know, we've gained other experiences, we've had fun at university, made the most of that experience for what it is. And also, you know, I didn't get a first at university. That's not necessary to become a barrister. So I did want to reiterate that as well. You know, if you don't get a first at university, don't stop your pursuit of becoming a barrister. Don't let other people tell you that's going to stop you. Maybe I'll make that point too. And then, I just hope you can take away from my journey that, you know, I mean, I've wanted to be a barrister for so long. And so my main tip, if that's the position you're coming in with, maybe you are quite young, sort of 16, 17, so at school or just starting out university, and you know you want to be a barrister, don't listen to all of the noise around you telling you otherwise.
Yeah.
Learn and listen to the people that are where you want to be, are enjoying it, are making a living from it, and learn why they are where they are. Focus on those people. Don't listen to the people that are dissuading you. That was what I say. What about you, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as we've touched on, that not everyone's journeys need to be the same. You also, I think there's sometimes this idea that you need to be a really, really loud, outgoing person in order to come to the bar. And don't get me wrong,
We are.
now I would say that, yeah, I'm loud, I'm outgoing, but I haven't always been. And you
Yeah,
know what? I also know people that I know are going to make fantastic barristers who I would say aren't as necessarily loud, outgoing. They're a different
absolutely.
personality, but they're going to be great barristers. They're going to be great advocates. So you don't need to be a specific personality type either. I mean, of course, there's a degree of public speaking about it, and that's something that comes with the job and you'd want to be comfortable with. But it doesn't need
Mm,
to mean that your personality is that all the time. And as I touched on in
mm,
sixth form, I didn't like speaking in front of people at that time. I was quite an anxious person, and I'd say that my confidence is built and my personality is built through university and through my experiences. So don't let that put you off. The bar can be for everybody.
definitely. There's a place for everyone. And also remember that when you're going through the pupillage process, that the chambers who gives you that yes, and you only ever need one, as everybody will tell you. But the chambers that gives you that yes is the right chambers for you. So in the back of your mind, you do need to take every other rejection as a blessing because they're not the right one for you. And you'll fit in at a chambers, at least one of them. There is definitely a place for all personalities. There is really a place for everyone. There are so many different chambers, so many different characters at the bar. There will be a place for you.
Indeed. I think that's a nice rounding off point. I hope you found the Future People podcast series helpful. Thank you, Evie, for being a regular guest and participant. Your advice is always incredible. I always enjoy listening, even as a fellow Future People. I enjoy listening and taking on board. So I hope everyone's found it helpful. And yes, we wish everybody the best of luck. And I think me and Evie would happily speak to anybody that's maybe listening to this podcast. If you wanted to get in touch on LinkedIn, say, I think we'd both be very happy for anybody to do that. So best of luck for those that may be starting on their legal
Absolutely.
careers. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, everybody. And Amy, you're a fantastic host, as always. Been an absolute delight working with you this year, gal.
Oh, thanks, Evie, and thank you to our podcast team. I should probably say that you're great. Specifically Bronwyn. I don't know if I'm
Yes.
allowed to say that. But I said it.
Phenomenal. Thanks, guys.